Shabbat Shalom. This week's Torah portion, Tetzaveh, marvels in beauty. It describes in exquisite and maybe painstaking detail the garments of the high priest. We read about the Hoshen Mishpat, the breastplate embedded with 12 radiant stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel. We receive instructions about the ephod, a tunic woven from golden, blue, purple, and crimson threads. God asks that the priestly garments and the tabernacle in the desert more generally be extraordinarily beautiful. As we take in the world around us today, as we worry about the direction of our country, the conflict in Israel and Gaza, and the many other difficulties out there, beauty can feel very far away. The way things look, particularly in the physical world around us, can be an afterthought. Given the stakes of the problems in the world, and for some of us, the problems in our personal lives, beauty can feel irrelevant. And yet, in our Torah portion, God tasks the Israelites through Moses, Ve'asita bigdei kodesh le'aharon achicha lechavod ultifaret. Make sacral vestments for your brother Aaron for dignity and splendor. Tiferet, splendor. When I think of this word, I find myself meditating on the physical space we are in now, the sanctuary and its awe-inspiring beauty. I had this thing as a rabbi here. I love watching people walk into this sanctuary for the very first time. People look up and they usually say, "Oh my gosh," or "wow," and often they lose their breath, and it's just such an overwhelming experience. From the 1,109 light bulbs, I love that, to the arches, to the beautiful stained glass windows, I find that there's wisdom in how our forebears designed such a beautiful space in which we gather for Shabbat and holidays. This beautiful space is an excellent example of Hidur Mitzvah, of beautifying a mitzvah. We are asked not just to enjoy the mitzvah of keeping Shabbat, but to make it beautiful. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote famously that Shabbat should be a palace in time. Although the sanctuary where we are now is not a palace, it shares with palaces that sense of splendor. In fact, the word tiferet in Hebrew, in addition to meaning beauty or splendor, also means crown. We gather in this extraordinary space, and on Shabbat we are asked to marvel at the wonders of creation and imagine the world as it ought to be. With so much turmoil around us, I wonder whether appreciating beauty is in fact part of a healthy way of being in the world. One of the most important ways to experience beauty is, of course, through nature. And this time of year, we are very fortunate to live in the Bay Area. As our friends and family on the East Coast are bundled up and cold, we get to enjoy what feels like the beginning of spring. My daughter Stella, for one, has especially been enjoying this season in the Presidio where we live. I am proud to say that she is able to identify the plant sour grass, which is blooming everywhere in the Presidio. She finds its yellow flowers, picks them, and stuffs them into her mouth, because of course they're edible. Through some miracle of toddler parenting, my wife Kate and I have managed to teach her that it is only sour grass and also the plant miner's lettuce that are edible this time of year in the Presidio. So thankfully, she's not picking any poison oak. Watching Stella identify and pick sour grass has filled me with amazement. It's such a beautiful thing to behold. And yet, beauty is not always easy to access. In addition to encouraging us to feel awe, our tradition acknowledges that some days we feel burdened, anxious, disconnected. The sight of sour grass might not spark amazement, but rather highlight the gap between the beauty of the world and our own inner turmoil. That more morose part of our tradition is best found reflected in the book of Ecclesiastes, or Kohelet in Hebrew. It includes one of the most famous lines in the Hebrew Bible, Ein kol hadash tachat hashemesh. There is nothing new under the sun. This famous line does a good job of encapsulating the mood of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes, to say the least, projects a bleak outlook. In fact, much of the book is even more somber than saying there is nothing new under the sun. The book begins, utter futility, as some people translate it. Utter futility, all is futile. What real value is there for humanity in all that gains humans make beneath the sun? There are ways to find a silver lining in Ecclesiastes, but I find it moving even if you don't find a silver lining. I find it even comforting. This is because the extent to which it normalizes feeling angst. People have been feeling this way since the dawn of time. Someone was so angsty that they wrote a whole book essentially about the futility of life. And this book resonated with other people so much that it was canonized in the Hebrew Bible. Of course, the book of Ecclesiastes isn't the entire Bible. It's one book that is very much contradicted by other books. In our divine symphony of different theologies and worldview that make up the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, here is one perspective that offers the view that sometimes we can be overwhelmed by how life seems futile. Giving voice to that perspective, speaking our angst out loud, and even reading about it in the Bible can enable us to let go of some of our angst. People who have been in talk therapy can generally tell you that the simple act of saying difficult things out loud can lead to a release and can lead you to feel more unburdened. Sometimes by saying our worst fears and anxious thoughts out loud, we can release them. And then eventually we can get back to experiencing beauty. If you're feeling down, if it's hard for you to access beauty in this moment, I invite you to again take in the beautiful space in which we sit tonight. In fact, there's a wonderful parallel between the beauty of this week's Torah portion and the very space we're in now. Above me, right over there is a fresco of the Hoshen Mishpat. Right there we see the colors of the 12 tribes displayed as they would be on the priest's breastplate. I take comfort in the wisdom of those who designed this sanctuary and included in it this image from this week's Parsha. As we come together to celebrate, may we behold beauty that reminds us that a better world is possible. This Shabbat, may we open ourselves to the beauty around us, whether in a grand sanctuary or small flowers in the Presidio. Shabbat Shalom.